Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How's everyone doing? MashaAllah, we already have 7 people on. No, this is not a Rickroll. I don't know why you didn't believe me. This is the actual class. SubhanAllah. People think I'm lying all the time. Hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Alright, get started in 1 minute, inshallah. Share this around with anyone that you know. Try to get people to jump on. This will be try to keep this 45 minutes, inshallah. Don't want to take too long because I'm still at work. Inshallah, if Allah wants, I will be famous with 100 million subscribers. Or did you mean 100 million subs like the sandwich? Because I wouldn't mind either. Alright. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Oh Allah, teach us what is beneficial to us and benefit us with what you have taught us and increase us in knowledge. Ameen ya Rabb al-Alameen. So, we are continuing with our Children Around the Prophet series, and I really hope that we're benefiting from the series and we're getting a good look at what it was like to be around the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. What was it like to live in his time, to have your childhood around his time? And really, subhanallah, the character of the Rasul is so big and he's so larger than life that sometimes it's difficult to really imagine him unless it's through the eyes of somebody else. And that's what really the series is trying to cover, what the children around the Prophet experienced when they were with him, what they sacrificed, what they offered Islam. So I like to start it off, as always. Who have we been talking about these last couple of weeks? Give me some examples. Who have we covered? Some names. See if we're learning anything. Who did we talk about last week, for example? Or the week before that? The week before that. Each week we're covering someone different. Suddenly the chat is quiet. The girl. What's the girl's name? This girl is the master of the women of Jannah. What's her name? The daughter of the Rasul ﷺ. So, last week we took Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, the servant of the Prophet, the scholar of our ummah. He gave us so many ahadith, lived to be 100, had hundreds of kids. Who was the daughter of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? Who knows? She's not just the girl. Fatima radiallahu anha. Thank you. Something with an F. Yes, Fatima. So, Fatima az-Zahra. Who else? So those are 2. Who else did we talk about? Come on, guys. These guys are like literal legends. These guys are heroes. We should know these names better than our own names. So last week we talked about Anas ibn Malik. Who did we talk about the week before that? I'll give you a hint. He was tortured for the sake of Islam and he held fast, him and his family. His parents were killed defending Islam. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. No, he's not one of the people that we covered. The person before that, who was the flag bearer of Islam? Bilal. We did not cover Bilal. No. Children, guys, come on. You can even look through the video titles. Go to the channel, click videos. Come on, now you're just throwing random guesses. Abu Bakr, Bilal. Come on, guys. Go through the videos. See who we covered before. Go through them. Ali, come on, thank you. Somebody. Ali radiallahu anhu. Ali was like 8 years old when he became a Muslim. Ali, the one that became the warrior of Islam. Who else? One more. Give me one more and I'll be satisfied. Just want to make sure that people are... I'm not just talking for an hour and no one's listening. No, we did not cover Omar. Mus'ab. I think you meant Musa. No, that's Saad, actually. Couldn't tell. Mus'ab, thank you. At least we have one sister who's paying attention. Mus'ab ibn Umair. Remember, he was the celebrity of Mecca. He was the rich kid of Mecca. And he threw that all away to become a Muslim and to follow the Rasul ﷺ. Guys, these people, we're not just telling their stories just, this is a nice like bedtime story. We hear it and then, that was fun. Next. We're trying to learn something from these people. These people dedicated their lives for Islam. They dedicated their lives to a higher cause, and some of them were younger than you guys. Some of them were even, like I said, Ali ibn Abi Talib became a Muslim when he was 8 years old. There's something that we can learn from them. So these names should be household names, and we can. I can see some people are just like, oh, Omar, Abu Bakr, Bilal. Okay, these are the great Sahaba as well, but the ones that we're covering in this series, I'm telling you guys about them because they're relatable to you guys, and they're relatable to me too because they were very young people. Abu Bakr was like in his 40s or something like that. Abu Bakr is a ammo to us, mashallah. He's the greatest ammo that ever lived, basically. But these other companions, they were kids like you and me. They were very young. So we should learn these. I'm not just here to talk. So next week, I'm going to be quizzing. When we start the next week's class, I'm going to be quizzing. Who did we talk about? What was his story? Otherwise, if I'm just talking around for nothing. Anyways, so today's title, we're actually going to be speaking about two people, father and son. We're going to be speaking about Zaid ibn Haritha and his son Osama ibn Zaid. So, Zayd ibn Haritha, again, same question I always ask. Who was his father? Zayd ibn Haritha. Who was his father? Uh-oh. The chat's drier than my phone. No, Abu Zayd. Haritha. Yes, thank you. Zayd ibn Haritha. So, oh, very smart. Abu Zayd. So, yeah, his father was Haritha. And Osama ibn Zayd is the son of Zayd. So remember, ibn means son of. That's how they would name people. All right, Ziyad, give up. You can't spell the name. So Zayd ibn Haritha. So both Zayd and Osama lived their childhoods with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And it's a very, very interesting story with both of them. Number one, what's interesting about Zayd? Who can tell me what's the most well-known thing about Zayd ibn Haritha? It's a very well-known thing. Let's see if anyone knows it. Zayd ibn Haritha is a very well-known companion. There's something very famous about him. Besides his name, what's very well known about him? His wealth? Nope, not really. Good guess, though. He wasn't very wealthy, actually. There are no wrong answers. Maybe you might have something that I don't even know about. Jade. So, Zayd ibn Haritha was... Okay, so this is a very good point, Laith. Was he the third person that accepted Islam? It's very likely if he wasn't the third, he was probably in the first five, right? So first five or first six or seven. So he was one of the very first people to accept Islam. The most well-known thing about Zayd ibn Haritha is, number one, the fact that he wasn't always called Zayd ibn Haritha. For a time, he was called Zayd ibn Muhammad, which means what? When I say that he is called Zayd ibn Muhammad, what does that mean? There we go. He was the adopted son of the Prophet ﷺ. He was for a very long time called Zayd ibn Muhammad, Zayd the son of Muhammad. He was literally the adopted child of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the other children that we talked about, the Rasul sallallahu, for Fatima, he was her actual father. And for Anas, he was like a father figure. And for Ali, he raised him like a father. But Zayd, he straight up adopted him. He was the adoptive child of the Rasul sallallahu. That's number one. Number two, Zayd is the only companion mentioned by name in the Quran. So many companions they're mentioned, things are mentioned about them in the Quran. Their words are mentioned in the Quran, and Allah references them in the Quran. But the only companion that's mentioned by name in the Quran is Zayd ibn Haritha. فَلَمَّا قَضَى زَيْدٌ مِنْهَا وَطَرًا. Can you imagine? Your name, people get hasanat for saying it when they read the Quran. That's such a huge blessing that we don't even think about. That's a huge honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to put somebody's name in the Quran. So we're going to talk a little bit about Zayd, how he became what he became, and then we're going to talk about his son, and then we're going to derive some wisdoms from it. So Zayd ibn Haritha, like we said, he's the son of Haritha, and he was from a southern Arab tribe close to Yemen. In fact, you can consider him pretty much a Yemeni from the Yemeni tribes. So he's very far away from Mecca. Now, I'm not going to get into the huge details about, what happened in, his early life, but basically when he was a child, there was some family drama that was happening, and um him and his mom were traveling in the journey, and a group of thieves attacked him and his mom, and they kidnapped Zaid. And when they kidnapped Zaid, they took him to Suq al-Uqav, which was the slave market. And they said, let's make a quick buck. Now, back then, slaves were of different prices depending on, you know, who they were and how old they were. Children were pretty valuable. Why? Because if you bought a child, you could teach the child to do whatever it is you wanted. And the child, you could boss him around, you could beat him if you wanted. So the child was basically do whatever you want with him. He's an empty cup. You can fill him with whatever you want. So Zayd, as a kid, was kidnapped, and he was taken all the way from Yemen to Mecca. Yes, kids were slaves. So back then, kids, it was a very tough and brutal world out there. Children could be slaves, and there were a lot of child slaves. So Bilal, for example, was a slave since birth because his mom was enslaved. So back then, slavery was inherited. So even if your parents were slaves, then you became a slave as well. And we kind of learned about that with Ammar ibn Yasir as well, if you remember. But in any case, Zayd was taken to the slave market, and he's this little boy, 6, 7 years old. He can't defend himself. He can't do anything. He can't call 911. There is no 911. You have to realize the world of Jahiliyyah, pre-Islam Arabia, was survival of the fittest. It's kill or be killed. Stuff like this can happen and nobody will care. It was a very brutal world to live in. So Zayd was taken to the slave market, and he was bought by a person by the name of can I remember his name? This is why I should always write the notes down, because then I forget names. In any case, he was bought by, if somebody can remind me, because the name is failing me right now. But this person bought Zayd, and this person was the nephew of Khadija. So this person, he saw Zayd in the market, and he was getting sold for a good price. So he decided to buy Zayd. I'm actually going to search it up because it's bugging me now. What was his name again? Uh, so in any case, where's his name? Hakim ibn Hizam. There we go. That's the name. I just remembered it. Okay, so the man, he's a relative of Khadija. He was Hakim ibn Hizam. He bought Zayd and he brought him to Khadija. Why would Khadija need a slave? Because Khadija was a businesswoman, and she had a lot of work that needed to be done. So Hakim was like, "Hey Khadija, listen, I found a good price for a slave. I thought you might like him." So Khadija took Zayd, and she kind of used him to, help her out with her business, because she had a big shop. She had like a lot of orders to go in. She was a very busy woman. She was a businesswoman. She was a very wealthy woman as well. When Khadija got married to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she gave Zayd to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she said, "This child, he's a gift for you." And back then, they didn't see anything wrong with this. Back then, they didn't see any problem with giving people as gifts and using them. There was nothing wrong with it. Everyone was doing it. So the Rasul ﷺ kind of inherited Zayd. He was his owner. But here's the thing. By the time Zayd became the slave of the Rasul ﷺ, the Rasul ﷺ, Zayd was a little older. Now he's maybe like 10 years old. The Rasul ﷺ didn't really have a need for a slave, but he really liked Zayd, and he treated Zayd with so much love and so much respect, to a point where people were being like, is Zayd his slave or is he his son? Like, they weren't used to the way the Rasul ﷺ was treating Zayd, because the way they were used to was that a slave, first of all, you don't give him good clothes. You just give him like a loin cloth around him, so that people know that he's poor. Second of all, you overwork your slave. You don't let him eat the same food that you do. You don't let him sleep in the same house you do. you give him terrible work to do, and you beat him and you belittle him. The Rasul ﷺ did none of this. When they ate, he would have Zayd sit with them and eat with them. When he gave him clothes, he gave him good clothes, nice clothes that everyone else would be wearing in the same house. He never ever insulted Zayd. He never ever beat him. Same things that you hear from Anas ibn Malik when he was serving the Rasul ﷺ, we hear from Zayd ibn Haritha. That the Rasul ﷺ treated him with so much love and so much care and so much respect that nobody could even realize that he was a slave. Nobody even could recognize him. Another interesting thing that not a lot of people know, Zayd ibn Haritha was he was played by an actor in the movie The Message. It's a great movie. I really recommend. It's on YouTube, I think, whoever wants to watch it. It's one of the most accurate movies about the Rasul ﷺ. But they have an actor who plays Zayd ibn Haritha, and the guy looks like a Spaniard. Zayd ibn Haritha was actually black. He came from the Yemeni tribes. They said that he was the darkest skinned of all the Arabs. So even though he was an Arab, he was still very dark skinned. So he wasn't like African like Bilal, but he was an Arab, but his skin was still very, very dark, which even put him at a lower rate level in society. But the Rasul ﷺ still didn't care. He still treated Zayd bin Haritha with a lot of respect. Years and years go by, and Zayd literally grows up in the house of the Rasul until he becomes in the age of about 20 years old. Very good, Omar. We're going to get to that. How'd you know that? So, when Zayd is around 20 years old, a man from Yemen is visiting Mecca. And he's going through and he sees Zayd and he realizes this man is an outsider. And he sees him and he says that this man doesn't look like he's a Meccan. He looks like he's from my land. He looks like he's from Yemen. So when he goes back, he finds Haritha and he tells him, he says, listen, and Haritha has been looking for his son for the past 10 years. He thinks that maybe the Romans might have taken him. He thinks maybe he might have been sold to Persia. He's trying to figure out, because a slave could end up anywhere. A slave could end up anywhere in the world. So when he hears the description, Haritha, him and his brother, they decide to go to Mecca. And they asked the man, they said, what do you know about him? And they said, he is owned by the son of Abdul Muttalib, meaning Abdul Muttalib's grandson, who was the Rasul ﷺ, who Abdul Muttalib was the most famous Arab that ever lived, probably at that time. What do you call it? So they knew that the Rasul ﷺ was his owner. So Haritha and his brother go to Mecca. And when they get there, they find the Rasul ﷺ sitting at the Kaaba. And they come to him and they say, "O Muhammad, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, you are from the Banu Hashim tribe. You are from the noblest tribe, and you're so well known." By the way, all of this happens before Islam. Everything I just said right now, none of this, the Rasul is not even a prophet yet. And he says, you are so well known for being generous. You're so well known for being kind. This was the Rasul ﷺ's reputation. Everyone knew that he was nice and kind and generous. And they said, you're so generous. And they said, our child was wrongfully taken many years ago and sold into the slave markets, even though he comes from a family of free people. And we know that he's under your ownership. So name whatever price you want and we'll pay for him. We'll buy him back from you. So his uncle and his father came trying to buy him back from the Rasul ﷺ. What do you think the Rasul ﷺ said when they gave this offer? And no, there are no links, so stop sending YouTube links in the comments. But what do you think the Rasul ﷺ reacted when they gave this offer? Take it free. Very good. He was just like, I'm not going to take any money. They said, but what did he say? He said, let's ask Zayd what he wants. Subhanallah. He said, if he wants to go with you guys, he'll go with you completely free. But if he wants to stay with me, then he'll stay with me. Subhanallah, this shows two things. Number one, the Rasul ﷺ sees Zayd as a person more than his own parents do. Because his parents are like, we'll buy him back from you. The Rasul is just like, well, let's see what he wants. And subhanAllah, a lot of people have this idea that Islam takes away freedom of opinion. This is not true at all. In fact, it's the one that brought freedom of opinion. It's the one that encourages you to have your own opinion. So the Rasul ﷺ says, let's get Zayd, and if he decides to go with you, you'll take him for free. And of course, Haritha and his brother are ecstatic. They're so happy. They're like, this is even more than we could have possibly asked. You're so generous. Now, what are they thinking? That Zayd, of course, he's going to want to go with them. So the Rasul Sallallahu calls Zayd. Zayd comes and he says, do you know these people? And Zayd goes like, yes, that's my father and that's my uncle. I can't believe it. They're here. I haven't seen them in years. And the Rasul Sallallahu says, Zayd, they are offering that if you want, you can go with them, or if you want, you can stay with me. And Zayd's like, oh, that's easy. And him and his father are just like, yeah. He's like, I'm staying with you, Ya Rasulullah. Well, he said, doesn't say, I'm staying with you, O Muhammad. And his father is just like, time out, what? And Zayd is like, yeah, I'm staying with Muhammad. He says, why would you stay with him? I'm your father. He says, I don't want to leave him. He says, why not? And Zayd goes, he says something very interesting. He says, I have seen things from this man that I will never see from any other person. Meaning the amount of love and respect that the Rasul showed Zayd. He said, I will never see this kind of love from any other person. And implicitly he's saying, not even from my own blood, not even from my real family. So his father is just like, this isn't happening. What do you mean you want to stay with him? And he keeps saying, would you prefer to be a slave over being a free man? And Zayd says, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. I'd rather be a slave with Muhammad. And he can't stomach it. He says, no, 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 I cannot leave until you come with me. I can't live with the fact that my son is a slave. So the Rasul says, if this is what's bothering you, then let me fix that. And the Rasul takes Zayd's hand and walks him to the front of the Kaaba, and he makes an announcement in front of all the people. He says, attention people of Mecca, this is Zayd, and I take him as my son. He will inherit from me, and he is from my family. So Zayd became formally adopt. Back then there were no adoption papers and the huge process that you have to go through now. Back then it was just a very simple announcement. The Rasul raises his hands and he says, this man is my son. And Zayd ibn Haritha officially becomes his son. When he sees this, Haritha actually gets very happy. Why? Because now not only is Zayd a free man, he is also now a member of the most noble clan and most noble tribe in all of Arabia. He's now a member of the Quraysh. Before he was just a Yemeni, and the Yemenis didn't have much honor or much respect in Arabia. But now he's from the Quraysh, and he's from the Banu Hashim clan, the Rasul's clan. And when he sees this, he's satisfied, he's happy, and he's like, listen, if my son is there and he's happy, that's fine. He's not a slave anymore, that's fine with me. Now he's a noble, basically. So subhanAllah, all of this happened before the Rasul even became a prophet. When the Rasul became a prophet, Zayd ibn Haritha was one of the first people to accept Islam. Again, he could have been third, fourth. In the top 5, it's debatable. Certainly Khadija was number 1. Ali was probably number 2 or 3, if you consider Waraqa ibn Nawfal. And Zayd is considered the very first Mawla. Who remembers what a Mawla is? I'll give you a hint. Ammar ibn Yasir was a Mawla, and his parents were also Mawali. What is a Mawali? What's a Mawla? He was the first Mawla to accept Islam. See if anyone remembers. I mentioned it in the class about Ammar ibn Yasir. A freed slave. Very good. So, a slave is a abd. A freed slave is a Mawla, meaning a former slave. So Zayd was the first Mawla to accept Islam. And actually, when the Rasul is pitching Islam to Bilal at the beginning, not Bilal. He's pitching it to, I forgot who. But the person asks him, he says, how many people are now Muslim? And the Rasul says, 1 woman, 1 free man, 1 slave, and 1 Mawla. And then he says, I think he also says, and 1 child. So Khadija, the first woman, Abu Bakr, the first free man, Zayd, the first Mawla, Bilal, the first slave, and Ali, the first child. So look at the firsts. These are the top 5. These are the 5 that you should be looking up to. And Zayd accepted Islam and became one of the first Muslims. Zayd was with the Rasul through everything. in the early stages of Islam, and he was with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam in one of the most difficult days of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life, which Omar mentioned in the comments, which was the day that the Rasul went to Ta'if. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasallam, when he went to Ta'if, he went to the city to pitch Islam to the leaders there, and he couldn't have expected a worse response. The people of that city, they gathered together. They got their thugs, they got the kids, they got the random hooligans in the street. They gave them rocks and they lined up in a row. And you know when like the king walks through a line and they're holding the swords, it's kind of like that. Except as he was walking, they were pelting him with stones and rocks. And they kept throwing rocks at him, and he ran through the city, and they pelted him for 15 miles almost. And they hit him with so many rocks that his legs and his feet were like flowing with blood. Like his slippers were literally squishing. Every time he would take a step, it would squish with blood. That's how much they hurt him. Zaid was with him on that day. There was no other companion with him that day. Zaid ibn Haritha was there, and he was trying his best to kind of cover the Rasul ﷺ from the stones and from the rocks so that he wouldn't get hurt. And he was very injured that day. And the Rasul loved Zayd so much. Like, it can't be said how much that the Rasul ﷺ loved Zayd. Even though Zayd he faced some difficulty in life because he wasn't very rich. And mawlas were not seen with that much respect anyways, even amongst the Muslims. The Prophet ﷺ tried his best to get people to respect Zayd a little bit. And he even got Zayd married to a very noble, rich woman by the name of Zainab bin Jahsh. So Zainab married Zayd, and the Rasul kind of wanted them to get married to kind of break the stereotypes. But even then, the marriage didn't work out very well, and the Rasul ﷺ and Zayd ended up divorcing Zainab. Okay. So, sorry, where's that message? Where was I? In any case, the Rasul ﷺ, one day he is going through, he sees a gathering of his companions, and he says, "Who would like to marry a woman from Jannah?" And Zayd immediately stands up. He says, "I would." So he says, "Would you marry Ayman?" And Ayman was she was also a mawla. She was also a former slave, and she was African. She was African Arabian, you could say, and she was a lot older than Zayd. So seemingly, it doesn't seem like she had much going for her. She was kind of old. She was a mawla too. She was poor. She didn't have too much beauty. But the Rasul said, "Who would like to marry a woman from Jannah?" And Zayd immediately said, "I would." And he got married to Ayman, and he had a son, and his son was Osama. And Osama was pretty much, they considered him the adoptive grandson of the Prophet. Now, we're going to take a little pause and talk about adoption, because I hear a lot of people get confused by this. They're talking about adoption. They say, wait a minute, adoption's haram in Islam. What gives? What's this? What's that? So, when people say adoption is haram in Islam, that sounds so horrible, and it's just like, oh, you can't be kind to kids or anything like that. Technically, yes, adoption is haram in Islam, but by the definition of what adoption is, it is haram in Islam to adopt a child and give him your last name and have him inherit from you. That is what's haram. Because when you take somebody, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Ud'uuhunna li'abaihin huwa aqsatu 'inda Allah." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, give them the last name from their father, their actual father. Which is why I said for a long time, Zayd was called Zayd ibn Muhammad. From that moment he was adopted formally, everyone called him Zayd ibn Muhammad. Actually, Abdullah ibn Abbas said, I never even knew that he was adopted, because we always used to just call him Zayd ibn Muhammad. I assumed he was the actual son of Muhammad. I never knew that he was actually adopted. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'uuhum li'abaihim." So they started calling Zayd ibn Haritha to his actual father. Why? Because this changes some of the dynamics of inheritance and of marriage, without getting into the complications. So you can adopt somebody in Islam, or the correct term is foster care somebody. You just don't change their last name. So, which is why they switched it back to Zayd ibn Haritha. And the Rasul ﷺ was the number one advocate for adoption. He said, "Ana wa kafilul yatimi kahatayni fil jannah." He says, "I and the one that fosters a child are going to be like this in Jannah." So it's like you and the Prophet will be like this together in Jannah. And subhanallah, what a lost sunnah it is to adopt children in Islam. It's such a very rare thing that you see that people don't really do anymore, even though the Muslim community has more orphans than probably any other community or any other like race or nationality in the world. The number of like Palestinian, Syrian, Yemeni orphans out there, even in this country, in my job we struggle a lot when we have Muslim kids in the foster care system because there's usually barely any Muslim foster parents. That's just not something Muslims do. Like, why would I want some strange kid coming into my house? But people from other faiths seem to do this a lot, and this is a lost sunnah that we should really begin to open up again, which is why I'm starting to do it. Technically, not really, just kidding. Whoever wants me to adopt them, let me know. Anyway, so the Rasul ﷺ had Osama, not so sorry, Zayd had his son Osama ibn Zayd from Ayman. And Ayman, she might have been almost 30 years older than Zayd, I think, if we're gonna calculate her age. Yeah, she was at least 30. So, and the Rasul ﷺ loved Osama so much. He loved him like his grandson almost. So there's actually funny stories. Ali bin Abi Talib, he got married to Fatima, as you guys know, we covered that in a previous class, and he had two sons, Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein. There's little two toddlers. Al-Hasan and Al-Hussein used to jump on the back of the Prophet and ride on his back while he was praying, and Osama ibn Zayd would join them as well. So Osama was kind of like in the family. The Rasul, just because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says he's not actually your son, don't call him like your son, the Rasul still treats him like his son, and he treats Osama like his what do you call it? His grandson. And subhanallah, Zayd had a nickname. They used to call him Hibbun Nabi, the beloved one of the Prophet. And they used to call Osama Hibbu ibn Hibbun Nabi, the son of the beloved of the Prophet. And subhanallah, when Osama was, growing up around the Prophet, people used to kind of see that anytime Osama used to ask the Prophet something, the Prophet would answer. So you know how there's always a special somebody that can get to that person, like that guy has a soft spot for him, right? So like, I'll give you an example. If Faiz asks me something, I'm going to be like, Faiz, get out of my face, right? But if Quiz asks me something, I'm going to say yes. No, this is just a joke. I'm just kidding. But like the example is that there are people that you have a soft spot for them. Osama ibn Zayd, the Rasul had such a soft spot for him, right? And Osama would ask the Prophet all these questions, and the Rasul would always answer. So what people used to do when they wanted something from the Prophet, they would go to Osama, this little kid, and they would say, "Hey, can you go to Jeddah? Can you go to your grandpa, the Prophet, and ask him this or ask him that?" That was a joke, Faiz. You know I love you. Anyways, so Osama used to get asked these questions, and he would go to the Prophet. However, just because of this, there are two incidents actually, or I'll just mention one just for the sake of time. But there was one incident where they tried to get Osama to do this, and the Rasul still refused. And this was when it had something to do with justice. So who knows in Islam what is the punishment of stealing in the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it was implemented in a Muslim Sharia country? What is the punishment of stealing? Who knows? It's not 20 years in jail or 30 years in jail or community service. Not burning, close. Cutting the hand, there we go. So in the Sharia, if a person blatantly steals, and he's not stealing out of necessity, meaning if somebody's starving and he steals, they don't do the hadd on him. But if somebody steals and he causes like damage, and there's some different criteria, and he gets caught and it's proven that he's guilty, the punishment for that is that he gets his hand cut off. right? This is from, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَالسَّارِقُ وَالسَّارِقَةُ فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيهُمَا. He says the thief and or the female thief chop off their hands. So this is a clear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If anyone tries to convince you otherwise, no. This is a clear rule from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't put people in jail for like 50 years of their life just because they stole something. But in any case, this is the punishment. Now, one time there was a woman, her name was Fatima. She's not the daughter, a different Fatima. And she was from a very rich, noble, elite family and from a very high class tribe. And she was caught stealing. And they were like, oh no, why would she do this? Why would she do this? Now we have to chop off her hands. And they're just like, but she's such a beautiful woman and she comes from such a nice tribe. So they went to Osama and they said, Osama, can you go to your grandpa? Can you go to the Prophet and convince him that, she's, from a good, noble clan? Can you convince her? And Osama's like, yeah, sure, I can do that. So Osama goes to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and he's a young kid. He's just kind of peer pressured from the other ammos. They're telling him to do this. And he goes up and he says, Ya Rasulullah, Fatima, she's from a very noble tribe. Maybe let this one go. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam got very, very mad. And it was when the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam got mad, it was like it showed. And this is something that we kind of think that if somebody is religious or somebody's good, that they don't get mad. No, they do get mad, but they get mad for the correct reasons. They get mad over injustice. They get mad over things that are being done wrong, like when people are getting wronged or when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his rights are not being given. This is the thing. They don't get mad just because their computer's not loading, or they get mad because, silly things, the tantrums that we throw. No, the prophets and the righteous people, they get mad over the right reasons. The Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he heard this, he got mad. He said, Wallahi, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destroyed nations and civilizations before you, because when a poor person did something wrong, they would put the full force of the law on him. But when a rich person did something wrong, they would let him go. SubhanAllah, look at this phrase. And I want you to compare this with America right now. When a poor person does something wrong, the full force of the law gets hit on him. When a rich person or a powerful person does something wrong, they let him go. I want to ask you guys a question. If a black African American poor person in this country steals, he goes and he like shoplifts and he steals a bag of chips, I bet you they're going to give him 30 years in prison, or like 20 years, or they're just going to, even if he was a kid or something like that, they'll treat him like an adult. They'll give him the worst sentence. When a multi-million-dollar white guy, right, white collar guy, and he embezzles millions of dollars, they caught certain people, I'm not even going to say their names, they did insider trading and made millions of dollars over the corona thing, or that they did tax evasion, something like that, they get away with it. They go to court, they take some pictures, the judge declares this or that. Our own president was proven doing this and that, and they let go. And this is a warning. The Rasul said, nations and civilizations were destroyed because they did this. And then he says an amazing statement. He says, Wallahi, if Fatima, the son of Muhammad, stole, I would chop off her hand. Look at the justice of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said this straight to Osama's face. Even though Osama was the beloved, he doesn't say, oh, Habibi, yeah, no problem, whatever you say. He doesn't spoil Osama. He makes it very clear there's right and there's wrong. He says, this woman, Fatima, she steals, we're going to chop off her hand. And wallahi, if Fatima, my own daughter, stole, I would chop off her hand. Subhanallah. This is the justice of Islam. This is something, one of the reasons why people accepted Islam back then was that Islam and Muslims brought justice in a world where there was no justice. Nowadays, you really need to ask yourself, these so-called Muslim countries that we see nowadays, how much justice is there, if there's any justice at all? Subhanallah. Another incident that happened with Osama ibn Zaid, when Osama got older, who remembers what was the age that you could join the battles? If you were a boy, like what age could you become a soldier? Not 12. Close, but not 12. Not 21. 14. This is after Ayah. Last time she said 7, so we'll make it up this time. Yes. So 14 was the cutoff age. And the Rasul ﷺ, he made one or two exceptions. But Osama was very excited. He wanted to go to his first battle. He was really excited. And back then, kids were brave. They wanted to defend Islam. They wanted to fight for what was right. They weren't. I'm sorry, I had to. It was just hilarious. You're like 7. So, he was very excited. He wanted to join the battle, and he wanted to, basically do jihad. So the Rasul ﷺ, when he became 14 years old, he allowed him to join one of the battles. In the battle, and Osama was trained by his father and, the family of the Prophet. They were very trained warriors. Ali bin Abi Talib was one of the greatest warriors of Islam. But in any case, Osama got into the battle and he was fighting. And he was doing a really good job. He was fighting people much older than him, much more skilled than him, and he was doing a great job. While he was fighting one of the combatants, he was fighting the guy, and Osama was able to disarm him. So his sword came out of his hand. And Osama was going to come with the finishing blow, and the guy was just like, I accept Islam, I accept Islam, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. And Osama's like, nice try, and finishes him off. He kills him. So some of the older companions, they saw what happened and they were like very uncomfortable with what happened. So they went to the Prophet ﷺ and they told him what happened. So the Rasul ﷺ, he called Osama after the battle and he asked him, how was it? How was your first battle? And Osama was like, oh, it was great. I was brave. I thought it was going to be much worse, but no, I was great. I was fighting guys way bigger than me. I was whooping it. I was killing it. It was really good. He was like talking about how, great it was. And the Rasul ﷺ asked him about that person. And Osama is like, yeah, I mean, he said, La ilaha illallah. He said he's a Muslim, but he was definitely faking it. And then the Rasul ﷺ, again, he got very mad. And the Rasul ﷺ said, did you open up his heart? Did you open up his heart? Do you know that he was just faking it? And what do you call it? Osama was kind of shocked. He didn't know how to answer that. And the Rasul ﷺ said, what are you going to do on the day of judgment with La ilaha illallah? What are you going to do? And he kept saying it and saying it over. He said, what are you going to do on the day of judgment with La ilaha illallah? What are you going to do on the day of judgment with La ilaha? And Osama said, he said it so many times, I wish I could just sink into the earth. So even though the Rasul ﷺ was very loving to Osama, he wanted to show him the sanctity of human life. You can't just kill somebody and say, he's not really a Muslim. Because what seemingly the guy was fighting, and now he knows he's about to die. Seemingly, yes, he is faking it. He's like, yeah, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Muslim. But the Rasul ﷺ doesn't want that to become a thing where you can just say, no, he's not really a Muslim. We can kill him. Why? Because subhanAllah, it's as if the Rasul could see what was happening in the future. All of these fundamentalist extremist groups, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, whatever you want to call them, their number one excuse for why they kill people left and right, they're not really Muslim. But they pray, they say like they're faking it. This is their excuse. And the Rasul ﷺ wanted to put an end to that from the beginning. He told Osama, did you open up his heart? Did you open up his heart and check to see whether he was a Muslim or not? And Osama said that he was still haunted, like that phrase scared him his entire life, that he was always scared of that phrase, what are you going to do with La ilaha illallah on the day of judgment? So I'm going to end here, inshallah. But one of the last things I'll say is that Osama ibn Zaid, despite what happened at that incident, when Osama was 17 years old, the Rasul ﷺ sent him to lead the army to open Palestine. And the Rasul ﷺ was on his deathbed when he gave this command, or he gave it and then he got very sick. And this showed that even though Osama made a mistake and the Rasul ﷺ was clearly upset by it, he didn't go like, guys, from now on, don't let Osama even go into the army. He let him lead the army. And he let him lead the army with people that were much older than him as well. So the Rasul ﷺ was very forgiving of people's mistakes too. He didn't just go like, all right, that's it. You messed up this time. You goofed up. That's it. Never again. He gave the chance to try again. He gave the chance to do better. And Osama led the army that started the conquest of Palestine. Subhanallah. We learn, subhanAllah, from Zaid and Osama the love of the Prophet ﷺ. You can only imagine what it must have been like to be raised by him. We see the amount of love the Rasul used to hug and kiss Osama, and this was something that was very strange to the Arabs. The Arabs were all like manly, manly, and kind of we have this. Our culture is a little different. In American culture, it's like if you do that, it's homosexual. You have to say no homo. It's like, guys, come on, what is this? The Rasul made it a sunnah. He used to say, I love you for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he would hug and he would kiss his children and he would play with them, even if they were boys. And he used to show that love and affection, because if you don't show that to kids, it has a bad psychological, emotional toll later on. And he used to do it with the adults too. He used to hug them. He used to say, I love you. This was the love that he used to show to his kids, his children, and the children of the Muslims in general. And that's something that we'll talk about next week, inshallah. But when the time came between right and wrong, the Rasul was uncompromising. Uncompromising, whatever it was. When Osama was asked, yeah, make an exception. He said, if Fatima, my daughter, did this, I would have chopped off her hand. Subhanallah. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can be like those companions, that we can emulate what they went through, and we can emulate the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that we can be generous, that we can be kind, that we can be loving, that we can be caring, and that we can be just, and that we can always stand for right against wrong. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. If anyone has any questions, now is a good time. What did it mean that what are you going to do with La ilaha illallah? It means, what are you going to say on the day of judgment if Allah asks, this man said La ilaha illallah and you killed him? So how are you going to answer that question? Because killing a fellow Muslim, killing your Muslim, is a huge crime in Islam. So he's asking him, what are you going to say to that if Allah asks you, why did you kill this man? As he was saying La ilaha illallah. How are you going to answer that? What are you going to do with La ilaha illallah? That's what he meant. In war, Muslims should always avoid fighting other Muslims at any cost. And if you are to fight other Muslims, as the Quran says, فَقَاتِلُوا الَّتِي تَبْغِي حَتَّى تَفِيءَ إِلَى أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. You only fight Muslims that are transgressing, like Muslims that are doing aggression. You cannot just go like, we don't like those guys, we want to fight them, or we want to take over their land. Generally speaking, that's not allowed. You can't fight other Muslims like that. Muslims should be united all the time. The only time where it's allowed to fight other Muslims is if those Muslims are being aggressive towards you. If those Muslims are invading your land, or they're killing, or they're doing horrible things like that, then yes, you have the right to defend yourself. Okay, so Ziad, yes, you get a shout out. Amir gets a shout out, and Layth gets a shout out. There, you happy? But yes, that's generally speaking, Muslims should not be fighting. But subhanAllah, the Rasul predicted that the moment Muslims fight other Muslims in battle, that will never stop until the day of judgment. And the first time Muslims ever fought other Muslims was in the time of Uthman. And since that time, up until now, Muslims have been killing each other. Subhanallah. Since that time, ever since the first time a Muslim raised a sword against another Muslim, it's been happening nonstop till now. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us for what we're doing. All right, Omar, you also get a shout out. You got the shout of the out. Any other questions, guys? Faiz, why do you keep trying to send YouTube links? I'm denying it. Hazem, do you wanna shout out? Hazem gets a shout out. Everyone like this video if you like things. All right. Jazakumullah khair, guys. If anyone has any questions, always message me, inshallah. Be sure to tune into the Quran circles that we do every Wednesday and Saturday, and the Sunday school stream that we do on Sundays. Amir, you get a double shout out. Good for you. All right. Omar, you also get a shout out. You all get shout outs. What is this link that you put, bro? Oh, yeah, Rickroll. الله يبارك فيكم. Alright, جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بارك الله فيكم.